Te Namini. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirisesha Sunyavadi Paskacha Digitarane. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirisesha Sunyavadi Paskacha Digitarane. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Na Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhavagacharya Sota Sata Sri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhavagacharya Sota Sata Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Sidhanta Saraswati Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Sri Haridasa Kaur Ki Jai. Brahmasaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Mayapur Dham Ki. Dvaraka Dham Ki. Munamaya Gangamaya Ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki, Shri Radha Madhava Ki, Astashakis Ki, Panchatattva Ki, Shri Lord Nrsingadev Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Go Premanandi, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Guru, glory to Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 14, Text 30 to 33. A lot of, I'll read through the first three areas. There's three paragraphs, and then the last is on the board. Saramsi Pushyakardani Kesaranya Archyasritaya Utta Kuruksetram Gaya Sriram Prayaga Palaharasyu Sadmaha Naminisyanam Palgunai Setyuhu Prabhasyo Deakasya Satali Varanasi Madhupuri Pampa Bindu Sarastataha Itaranya Nasuram Nanda Sita Ramasyama Badaha Sarve Kulyu Kalya Region. Okay, now, Eti Punyatma, Desa, 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 Harir Arasritas Cha Ye Etan Desan Nisevita Sreshyas Kamo Ri Abhidikshanaha Dharmo Ri Atrihityaha Pumsam Samasvidi Paladayaha Eta Punyatma Desa Ariyachasvitascha Che Etan Desam Nirisvita Sresha Kamohi Abhikshana Damohe Aryahita Pumsyam Sahasradi Puladayaha Eta Pumyatmana Desa Hari Arasyitas Chaye Etan Desa Nivesita Shreyas Karmohi Abhivikshyaha Dharmohi Advihitya Pumsam Sahasritihi Palayadaha Adesha Hariyasritas Chachare Etan Desa Nivesita Ladies. Iti, all of them, Punya Samatamaha, extremely sacred. Desa, places, Harir, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Archa Sityaha, places where the deity of Radha-Krishna is worshipped, such as big American cities like New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and European cities like London and Paris, or wherever there are centers of Krishna consciousness. Cha, as well as, yea, those which, etan desan, all these countries, nisevata, should worship or visit, shresha kamaha, one who desires auspiciousness. He, indeed, abhikshanasyaha, again and again, dharmyaha, religious activities, he, from which, atra, in these places, itaha, perform, pumsam, of the persons, sahasra adhi, more than 1,000 times, prala udayaha, effective. Translation and purport by Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The sacred lakes like Puskara and places where saintly persons live, like Kuruksetra, Gaya, Prayaga, Pulahasrama, Narayana, banks of the Phalgu River, Setubandha, Prabhasa, Dvaraka, Varanasi, Mathura, Pampa, Bindu-sarovara, Badarikasrama, Narayanasrama, places where the Nanda River flows, the places where Lord Ramacandra and Mother Sita took shelter, such as Citrakuta, and also the hilly tracts of land known as Mahendra and Malaya. All of these are to be considered the most pious and sacred. Similarly, places outside India where there are centers of Krishna consciousness movement and where Radha-Krishna deities are worshipped must be visited and worshipped by those who want to be spiritually advanced. One who intends to advance in spiritual life must visit all these places and perform ritualistic ceremonies to get results 1,000 times better than the results of the same activities performed in any other place. Purport. In these verses, and in the verse 29, stress is given to one point. Hari asratitasya chaye hari acha. In other words, in any place where the deity of Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped by devotees is most significant. The Krishna consciousness movement is giving the population of the entire world a chance to take advantage of Krishna consciousness through the ISKCON centers, where one may perform deity worship and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and this way obtain results with effectiveness increased 1,000 times. This constitutes the best welfare activity for human society. This was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, as it was predicted by him in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Anya 4:126. Prived ache yata nagridi grama savatra pacharahebi mora adnamaha. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted the Hare Krishna movement with installed deities to spread to every village and town in the world, so that everyone in the world might take advantage of this movement and become all auspicious in spiritual life. Without spiritual life, nothing is auspicious. Mokshaha, moga karmano, moga gyan, vichasya, excuse me, Bhagavad Gita 9:12. No one can become successful in fruitive activities of speculative knowledge without being Krishna conscious. As recommended in the Shastras, everyone should be very eagerly interested in taking part in the Krishna consciousness movement and understanding the value of spiritual life. Now Srila Prabhupada is directing towards an outside audience. Obviously all of us understand all this, or we wouldn't be here. So Prabhupada was asked a couple times. There was one question Prabhupada answered very amazing. He said, why are you establishing all these deities, all these temples outside India, because ultimately everything is in India. Prabhupada says, I'm reestablishing where the deities used to be. Now, have you ever heard that? He's reestablishing all the temples where they used to be. So in America, Europe, all over all countries around the world, there were temples before. So now it's being reestablished. Prabhupada is bringing back the culture that was lost, and now it's being redefined. So there's a story, very informative. There was a lady in Los Angeles. She was at a bookstore inquiring about the name of a couple that she said in a dream kept the whole California continent from sliding into the water. And so there happened to be a devotee standing right next to her looking for a book. And he asked her, what's the name of that couple? He said, Rukmini Dwarkadish. No. So you got that one? And so he said, well, I know who they are, and I can take you to where they are. So he took this lady to the temple in New Dwarka, and the deities there are Rukmini and Dwarkadish. And so Dwarkadish means Dwarka, or it means the one who saves from going into the ocean. Okay, so that's one temple. Now there are temples all over the world, and each temple is given a blessing that Prabhupada is given here. And then when Prabhupada is talking to Indians, now no offense, mind you, for anybody Indian body here, but he says the Indians, they come and they argue and they talk and they bicker back and forth and they complain, and ultimately they don't surrender. So surrender means giving everything up to the Supreme Lord. And in all these places, if we residing in Mayapur, of course, is accumulation of all these tirthas because of Lord Chaitanya's mercy here. And so everything is 1,000 times enhanced. So by being here, by hearing class, by giving class, by being part of the whole movement, everything that happens in Mayapur, it's gorgeous. And so just by partaking in the opulence of Mayapur is just, can you imagine everything done 1,000 times more? So maybe it's 1,000 times plus 1,000 times, because if it's 1,000 times everywhere else, Mayapur is more. So ultimately, Mayapur is gorgeous in all respects. So when Prabhupada was talking, I'm listening on tape now. I hear a tape all day while I'm working, but Prabhupada is talking to a bunch of Indians. He's beating them over the head. Just, don't you understand? And it just, people are criticizing and arguing with Prabhupada. And just to understand that what he could tolerate was like just a patience and tolerance. And Prabhupada, in many cases, didn't tolerate. It just shut down these people who were pushing, who is God? I mean, can you imagine asking Prabhupada, who is God, from an Indian, somebody in Indian body? And Prabhupada said, that's the state of affairs here in India, where somebody born in India, the land of God, the land of Darshan, the land of Dharma, he's asking who is God. And so it's understandable, say, somebody outside the movement who can ask that. Who is God? So the last time I talked about this atheist I met, and I was so happy to meet an atheist. I wanted to say a little bit more about this experience because it was so incredible. Now, an atheist is a person who just does not believe in God. There's a distinction. Some people believe, but they accept God is limited. Doesn't have any eyes, legs, anything that material like that we could understand. So certainly God is not material in any way, but he can eat through his eyes. And Prabhupada says, you try that. You eat through your eyes. Jam the food in your eyebrow, in your ears, and see what happens in the stomach. Not satisfied. So anyway, the atheist, his name was in this book that he had. He had a big voluminous book called Who's Hell and Who's Who and Who is Who in Hell. So his name was in the book. So I proceeded to take him apart place by place. And his criticism mainly was about the Bible. The Bible has been distorted and changed over the years, whereas our literatures are not. And so I told him, I said, there's more to be reckoned with than just a Bible. There's a lot more literature available. If you just look towards India, you'll see it's unlimited. Of course, he had no knowledge of India or anything coming from India. And so I said, the Bible, for example, already now they made a new change, which is thou shalt not murder instead of thou shalt not kill, which restricts the killing process to humans and not to animals. So Prabhupada is very strong about protecting the animals, especially the cow, and that's taking place wonderfully, finally. So the atheist kept harboring on different points where he found errors in the Bible. Okay, I said, there may be mistakes in this literature because ultimately it's not by pure devotees. It's not coming down the line as pure. So ultimately there will be mistakes. And so don't put your faith just in the Bible. So he took that in consideration, and then went right about back to drinking coffee and just talking nonsense. So Prabhupada said, don't waste your time talking to atheists because they're not going to change. And I experienced that. But when you're talking to a devotee audience, we should know one thing, that ultimately we're here to inspire and to create an auspicious situation. In other words, just by reading Bhagavatam, giving realizations is enough. But more, if you research, and the folio is there for everybody. If you have it, use it. If you don't have it, get it. Because there you can understand, there are a lot of new things that haven't been talked about. I mean, this whole thing about reestablishing temples in places where they were once before. And I just reflect back on some of the experiences I had in America. Recently, my brother's son just died. He was dancing, and the daughter just got married. He was dancing and having a good time, and he just collapsed in a corner and died right on the spot. And so, and Aditya just died in Vrindavan. So our days are numbered, and it probably keeps talking about the whole time being very short, and that the movement is expanding, and so is our interest in becoming more serious about devotional life. And if we reside in any of these places, residing in Mayapur, of course, is a culmination of residing in a forest. So Prabhupada said that we have to go to the forest at some time, renouncing, taking liberty of exercising freedom from the family situation. And so one who takes sannyas, Prabhupada did say that you have to get permission from your wife. The woman has to appreciate the fact that you're going peacefully, not that you abruptly leave grihastha life and leave your family in a lurch. Okay, so another point I mentioned last time was about Madhavisa, and the story was given to me by him. He came to me, and there's another sannyasi I'll talk about also, because their stories are very instructive. Madhavisa, he got that done, I think, here in Mayapur, but he was upset that his friends were taking sannyas and he was being left out. So Tamal Krishna just got sannyas, so he wanted sannyas, and Prabhupada gave him the danda. He says, I hope you can maintain this, but I have some doubt. And of course, he didn't do so well. He did fantastic, of course. He did so much service. But he said that when he was able to get back here, Prabhupada was so pleased that he came back, and he said, listen, don't ever worry. If there's fall downs, that happens. That's part of life. Life is not easy. Ultimately, if you fall down, just get back up. And so he wasn't upset at all about him leaving the movement or taking sannyas, or leaving sannyas. But he was more upset at Tamal Krishna for making it hard for him to come back. So, in other words, we don't criticize. We don't find fault in God brothers, God sisters, or anybody who is chanting the holy name. And so unfortunately, that's not the case. And there's cases of suicide within our society. I just was hearing this story. I mean, unfortunately, we don't know the force of Maya. And so Maya can be very strong and force a person into a hole he can't get out of. And so ultimately, if you're not happy in Krishna consciousness, you're not happy. So being happy, I remember in New Dvaraka when I was a brand new devotee, there was a Mataji there, an Indian lady who was crying and lamenting and just, I couldn't believe it. I thought everybody in Krishna consciousness is happy because they're dancing and chanting and jumping up and down. And then there's one experience that happened in New Dvaraka. Prabhupada was dancing. And so the whole place just went bazook. I mean, it went wild. The kirtan was going through the roof. And so this happened a few times. It happened when Prabhupada left his body also. So Prabhupada, after explained why it was such a wonderful kirtan, he says, because Narada Muni was there, Lord Brahma came, Lord Shiva, and they were all laughing. And why were they laughing? Because of the Malachas and Yavanas dancing and chanting the holy name. So from their perspective, you see from the perspective of these great souls, I mean, Lord Brahma coming down to take darshan of Prabhupada and the experience that took place in Prabhupada's time. There are many stories. I'd like to relate a couple of these stories about Prabhupada's unusual qualities. He was traveling all over the world, and ultimately the traveling around the world so many times to keep godbrothers from killing each other. Hansa Duda said he put Tamal in Africa. No, he put a Tamal in Russia. No, China, was it? China. And he put me in Sri Lanka. He knew we couldn't get along. Well, I used to play the devil's advocate. And I go to Tamal and I say, Maharaj, Hansa Duda wants to get closer to you and he wants to become friendly again. I go to Hansa Duda and I say the same thing to him about Tamal. So I try to put them together because I know there'd be a fight. And as soon as one day they came together right outside the Krishna Balaram temple, and they're screaming and yelling at each other. I mean, it was just like two lions attacking each other. And so in the early days in this movement, it's not all peachy gory, and there were some hard times. And devotees used to curse each other. And so that cursing effect is still there. So, but it boomerangs sometimes, you get a backlash. So better not to curse each other and treat each other with respect. And so at least try to love each other. And before, I mean, I thought ultimately we're not killing each other at least, and then that started. So life in Krishna consciousness is very simple, very easy. As Prabhupada said, you don't have to aspire for anything more than just chanting the holy name and not trying to do something not trying to remake Krishna's creation, not trying to do something better than what Krishna's already established. Because everything has been established in perfection. Anything done, Krishna's in everything, he's in every atom. So ultimately there's no way that this movement is going wrong. Even though we may think that it is by some problems that happen on a daily basis. So problems are bound to happen. And problems are meant to be stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. And as soon as we face a problem, look over the shoulder of the problem and look to a higher dimension and look to the horizon, because you might find if the door is closed in front of you that there's going to be another door opening which goes to a better place. And so I've seen that in my own case. There are many times where I've been kicked in the face by some of the biggest devotees in the movement, and ultimately you just grin, take it as it comes, and ultimately you get blessed by that. You get punya. If you understand that when somebody criticizes you or makes trouble for you, ultimately he's giving you all their punya on a silver platter. Here it is. Everything here is given to you. All my pious credits, they're yours. And so people who cheat you ultimately end up getting cheated in themselves. This one story about this devotee, he was doing Prabhupada's books, the original books. And so that was in America, in some area where they have these rock and roll festivals. They go there and they do really well. And so another group came with the new version. And so the new version was being pushed in, and they were trying to push out this devotee who was doing the old version. And so the same books. Basically, the changes are they're questionable in many cases, but changes were, when Hayagriva, he told me, he said, Prabhupada told me that we're both writers, and why don't we just travel together and write? Now, why didn't I take advantage of that, he said. And so, and Hayagriva was fresh out of, he was brand new devotee. So a lot of things he didn't understand, like cows were cattle. And so, there are a lot of changes in a book that are legitimate, but sometimes it goes too far. In any case, Jayadvaita was having a class in Mayapur. No, it was in Vrindavan. And so, in the middle of that class, everybody started complaining and jumping on his case, and it became like a free-for-all. And so as I'm holding the microphone, I'm talking, so I have to have the last word. And so they wouldn't allow that. It just kept jumping on his case, and finally it ended up they stole his shoes outside, so he was really, really upset. He says, what do I have to do here? They shot my only disciple. That was Kadambakani got shot in a very unusual manner. So, but Vrindavan, I had 40 years of life in Vrindavan, and I got trained up in the Navy before I got to ISKCON to be able to handle some of the results that take place in our movement. You got to be very strong. And so if you're not strong, you fall sway to the weaknesses that are coming from material energy, from the material body. So the same devotee who was pushing Prabhupada's old books got pushed right out of the whole scene and wasn't able to do any kind of book distribution whatsoever. He ends up shooting himself through the mouth. Boom. He says there's no more longer any time that I can do anything to help push. He was doing thousands and thousands of Prabhupada's books. And so there are cases like that where devotees, they just reach an end. Another story, I won't mention his name, but it's very funny. Maybe not funny. He had all the instruments to kill himself. He had guns, and he had every way that he could take care of this whole business. And so he ended up at the Golden Gate Bridge. At the Golden Gate Bridge, it happens to be a place where somebody dies, somebody jumps every few days. And so I think there's like a couple hundred people who have jumped already. So finally, the nephew of the guy that opened the bridge, or in charge of the security of the bridge, his nephew died, jumped. And so then he put up safety nets on either side of the bridge. In any case, this devotee is just ready to jump, and along comes a van from New Vrindavan and blasting out the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so he turned around and saw something that he just couldn't believe was going to take place. And at that moment, he was saved. They brought him in a van, took him to New Vrindavan. And he couldn't chant. He made so many offenses. He was guru. And so all these offenses accumulated to the point where he couldn't talk, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything. And so finally, he started chanting a little bit. And so the chanting process started. Then he could sleep a little bit for a few seconds. Then he chanted a little bit more. He could eat a little bit. And finally, he got back to the position where he was really strong and Krishna conscious. And so the moral of the story is that ultimately, don't leave the movement. It's the greatest benediction that we can have in a human life. And so just take it as it goes. Take the highs and the lows and just keep plugging away and work as best you can and reach the goal. And it's so simple. If we just chant the holy name and follow the program, ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. And so the last part of Mahavisa's story is that he was hiding, so he went to the outer rim of the Andes mountain chain, so he was like totally remote, miles from anybody. And so now I can at least chant and be in peace, and I'll just suffer in separation. And so, but what comes along is the Harinam party. So in other words, they told him, Prabhupada, Madhavisa, Prabhupada's looking for you. And so he had to go back. He had to go back, and he apologized to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada certainly accepted with honor and glory, because he was a great instrument, one of the big generals. But he said that towards the end. He said, Prabhupada never criticized and never had any problem with my leaving. It was my coming back that was important for him. And so if we do have trouble, and ultimately trouble comes, ultimately it's material world, but anything material, and even here it's mentioned about speculation and anything material, it's still guided by Super Soul. So we're Super Souls guiding us in everything that we do. From animal existence right straight through the whole collection of all the bodies that are in 700,000 species of human, what to speak, of all the animal species. In any case, and so if the guidance is there, if you listen quietly to that Super Soul, and you'll hear it, you'll hear the voice, and I recognize it quite often more now than quiet times, and so it'll direct you to make the right decisions. And so if we just listen carefully to that soft voice, and ultimately we're guided. We're guided within that way and without from spiritual master. The ship is flying along, and I used to be in the Navy. And when you're guiding a ship, the helmsman is steering that ship, and it's always trying to keep this thing on course, because it goes this way, that way, this way, that way. It's totally in motion. And so the same thing with material life. We're pushed in different directions that we don't want to go. Like in Grihastha life. I mean, this whole thing is chapters about Grihastha life. And so at some point, the responsibility of a Grihastha is to make sure the family is well cared for and Krishna conscious. If you can't do that, Prabhupada says, don't be a family man, don't be a father, don't be a mother. You have to guide that child to the point where they become Krishna conscious and liberated, free from birth and death. So if you can't do that, don't take that responsibility. But if you've taken it, ultimately, it happens that everything is given in Krishna consciousness. Even if you cross the path of 50 years in age, and then ultimately life starts to change. And so it's benedicted and bona fide that you can take that change. Once you've taken care of your responsibility in terms of Grihastha ashram, but then you can renounce and gradually take more to spiritual life. Of course, the brahmachari doesn't have to worry about any of that. He's benedicted from birth. And Prabhupada said that if it's better, certainly, not to even aspire for any of that stuff, you know. Let me go to my notes for a minute. I was just mentioning that there are a lot of Shishupals in this world who show disrespect to God, so keep away from those thousands of Shishupals that you can encounter in the material world. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he had a system, which I didn't know about when I first joined, but I got to Vrindavan, and there was a system that he set up. If you gave $1,000 or more, you got darshan. Anybody know that? It's something that Tamal Krishna set up to get some money for Prabhupada's maintenance. And so I didn't know. I didn't know that, but we gave everything. We gave more than that. And so outside, Jayapataka Maharaj was jumping on my case today because he knew I just came from fate, working in dioramas, and he says, come to Mayapur, and ultimately you get a chance to work in dioramas. We'll give you facility. And that, but Prabhupada just had, in this darshan I got with Prabhupada, he said to stay in Vrindavan. So I had both places, Vrindavan and Mayapur. And so it took me 40 years to get here, but thank you, everybody, for allowing me to speak. But we still got time. One thing I wanted to get into a little bit is about the donations that we give in terms of Krishna consciousness. If we get an inheritance, or if money comes to us from some way or other, the money is blessed and is earmarked for Krishna. Give everything to Krishna, no matter what it is. Anything get new, give it to Krishna first. If you get a new piece of cloth, offer it to Krishna or to Prabhupada. And ultimately, if you offer everything first to the Lord, through the pure devotee, ultimately everything is bona fide and everyone's satisfied. And so the same thing with giving donations. Now, it's important to give something every time you come to the temple. Otherwise, you come empty-handed. It's not so important. I mean, it's not so nice. Something, flower, a leaf. I mean, giving yourself is nice, but ultimately some gift should be given to the deities. And in terms of giving money, when I joined, everything was just given full-handed and just given completely, 100%. Now, it turns out, in Vrindavan, people who are counting the hundi, when the donation box is being opened and they're counting the bills. You know, here's 1 rupee, 2 rupees, here's 50 rupees. Here's 100 rupees. And so people are seen doing this. They're taking money right from, it's just Prabhupada's blood. And anybody who takes money in that fashion, taking it illegally, I mean, not to even take money in terms of taking a salary or being paid to do service. Ultimately, everything, Prabhupada was against all that. He said, this is a movement by which everything is given freely. We don't take. Giving is better than receiving. And so, if we give properly in the right way, in the right fashion, and guide it so that when the money is given, we see where it goes. Because now a lot of money is being disappropriated. We hear many stories that in different temples, we won't put the finger on anybody, but ultimately a lot of money is being misspent. So you got to be very careful. If you have money and you want to donate it, you have to donate it. The standard is still setting, is still clear. 50% for, as Prabhupada set up, 50% what he got was for books and 50% temples. For us, it's the Goswamis setting up the example, 50% for Krishna consciousness, 25% for family, and you keep it 25% for emergencies. Okay, but be careful how you give it. One of my managers in Vrindavan used to say, if you're going to throw money in the Jamuna, count it before you throw it away. And unfortunately, I misappropriated so much, giving it to false. There's a brand of person called the dream merchants. You may not know about these people. The dream merchant is a person who takes your dream and sucks it dry. So he said, I want to do something big for Prabhupada. And so you go into different personalities that think I'm going to help you. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. And so just believe in me and I'll take care of everything. I've been led down the wrong path so many times by people in Vrindavan who cheated. And out of all these people who cheated before have died. Because Krishna doesn't allow it to take place. And if it does happen, ultimately the person who steals from you takes a heavy reaction. So be careful about how you give money. Make sure it goes to where you want it to go. That's just the important part of being a devotee nowadays. Oh, one time Prabhupada is in Africa. Maybe you know this, but he's preaching to the Africans, and one African raised his hand and said, "Well, your God is black." "Yes, but not black like you." Then after the time he was talking, there were a lot of empty wallets around on the floor. They were pickpocketing each other during the time that Prabhupada was talking. So he says, ultimately we're free from any kind of vice, but ultimately you have to be intelligent and careful about your money. Oh, there's another funny one. That Rameshwar, he had the most pertinent questions that he asked Prabhupada constantly. On one morning walk, he was asking several questions, and I was so amazed by the responses, but also by the questions, perfect answers from Rameshwar. Very empowered personality. So on the morning walk, Prabhupada was talking about the seer is the same, the dream and waking, the dream state and the waking state. Now, the seer is the same. I didn't understand what that was about until later. And so the seer is the same. If you're dreaming, okay, it's a dream state. But ultimately, the dream continues while you're awake. It's just that we're awake longer, but the dream is still going on. So the dream is still alive. The dream is still going on. And it's a dream state. Everything we do and see and touch, it's a dream state. It's real, but it's temporary. And so we think, well, okay, I mean, the dream state, you're a bit, you can, some of the dreams, one dream, I'm walking with Prabhupada right near my hometown, my house, where I was born and raised. And so I said, Srila Prabhupada, this is where I was born and raised. It's old Tirtha. So Prabhupada had a sense of humor that never stopped, even in a dream state. I told this one dream before, maybe again, but dreams are important. And so Prabhupada comes to me in a dream and he says, get serious about your spiritual life. I mentioned this before, but it's pertinent. And I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, yes, okay. I woke up and wrote it all down. Went back to sleep. Again he comes. This time he's carrying this big marble plaque. And it's inscripted in Latin, carved in stone. You read Latin? I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, a little bit, because I know Italian. So he said, what does it say? It says, get serious about your spiritual life. And so it's carved in stone. So this is, I think, an instruction for everybody. To get serious about our spiritual life, no matter how serious we think we are. And so he said, you should be serious, shouldn't he? And he talked to somebody else, and here's another Prabhupada, two Prabhupads. Get serious about your spiritual life. So I'm trying my very best. But I'm full of holes, unfortunately. But I try. I think we got time for questions. Anybody got a question? Oh, go ahead. We should have a microphone so that we can hear these questions. They don't bring a microphone around. Anyway, go ahead. Can you scream it? They're looking for a microphone. Give me a chance. I got another. Oh, here's your microphone.
Thank you. Thank you for a really inspiring class. My question is, could you help us understand how grihasthas can move to the vanaprastha stage, because that's the time to really, if you're still alive, to really get serious about spiritual life.
If your question is moving from grihastha to vanaprastha life, I think it applies for both men and women, that you got to have the permission of either part of your family, so that you are bona fide in taking vanaprastha. Because ultimately it's a loss to the family if the man goes away. But there's a reason for it, that a man has to have a bit more time for spiritual life, because the woman gets a percentage of that anyway. You get half the punya of a man's opportunity in spiritual life. And so there's no divorce, but still there's that option that at 50 and plus you can take vanaprastha. And so that a man can spend the rest of his life in spiritual life. I'm vanaprastha, and I was 45 years married. And in the beginning, it said in the beginning things are bitter, become very sweet. So my wife, she was catatonic, which means she can't talk. She didn't talk very much in the beginning. Then we got married, and she never stopped. And so I said, okay, that's what's going to happen next. Then anyway, we finally came to the movement, and we started chanting, and it was okay. And so you see her today. She's very happy, very lively, and very effulgent. So does that answer it? That answer your question? I'll say it again if you got to repeat the question.
Yeah, I did get, you said that, there's separation and so on. So when the man is away, how is the wife going to manage the vanaprastha state? What is she supposed to do?
Okay, have a good time. Because you're on your own. Basically, before the vanaprastha happens, the man has to be assured that the woman and the family are taken care of. Otherwise, there's no vanaprastha. If it's just left in a lurch, and that has happened in our society, where just suddenly you get married, or first brahmacharya thinks, well, either I should get married or take sannyas. Now, what kind of a choice is that? And so, but once you make the choice, then it has to be asserted. And Prabhupada was very upset that men didn't stay married. We have a bad track record in terms of grihastas leaving their wives. So ultimately, the wife should be taken care of. Should be in the hands of the son or daughter or children or relatives. And so you're provided for. It can't be that a woman is just left dangling. And it happens, I think, in Mayapur. We have a lot of single women, and they're not really cared for properly. So that should be addressed. It should be understood that everybody should be happy and well maintained in Krishna consciousness. If it's not, then there's a problem. Any other questions? How can we get that over to you? Let me just review your...
Since you were mentioning Madhavisa, there's a little further story about when Srila Prabhupada was preparing to leave his body, he asked to see Madhavisa. And Madhavisa was not looking very devotional at that time, and he was almost very embarrassed, as a lot of devotees who blooped felt to come back. It was very embarrassing. But since Srila Prabhupada actually asked to see him, he left and went to Vrindavan to see Srila Prabhupada. And when he arrived in Delhi, he had very long hair, and he was dressed in his, I guess, almost semi-hippie type clothes again. So he bought himself a kurta, and he shaved his head and left a nice sika, and then went to see Srila Prabhupada. He said he was very embarrassed when he got into Prabhupada's room. He just kind of like was cowering in the back, but Prabhupada wanted to see him, so he said, Madhavisa, come up. So Madhavisa came up to see Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada mentioned two things to him. He said, where is your wife? How come you did not bring your wife? And he said, well, Srila Prabhupada, she's actually expecting a baby, so she couldn't make the trip. And Prabhupada says, oh, that's too bad. I would have liked to have seen her. And then Srila Prabhupada said, what a very nice sika you have, Madhavisa. So that were the only two comments he had. He didn't sort of say, where have you been, what have you been doing? He just made Madhavisa feel loved again. So
he said that in those last darshan, that Prabhupada was very pleased, and he mentioned some of that story. But when was that, when he came? Do you remember?
Right before Srila Prabhupada left.
I think I remember seeing him when he came. I was there. The same thing in that last moment when Prabhupada was leaving his body. I mean, the whole place was surcharged. There was so much energy in that room. And I could feel presence above our heads that you don't see it much anymore, but that the demigods came in for the event. And so it was so surcharged. Every square inch of that room was packed solid with intensity. And so when Prabhupada did leave, he said Hare Krishna and left, and the whole thing dissipated. All that energy just vanished to some degree, and then a whole new movement started. So here we are. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Mahaprasad ki jai. That's what we want next.